On the morning of January the 5th, 1987, a call was made to the Franklin County Sheriff's Department at approximately 8:15. The caller, identified as Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, reported the presence of an unresponsive woman on the porch of her neighbor's home at 312 Birch Lane, a typical suburban street in the town of Waynesboro, Pennsylvania. Mrs. Hayes, a retired schoolteacher, had noticed the figure as she collected her mail. The woman was later identified as Paula Jennings, age 29, a resident of the same neighborhood. Responding officers arrived on the scene by 8:45 that morning. Officer James Keegan was among the first to assess the situation. According to his initial report, Paula Jennings was found lying supine on the wooden porch, her limbs slightly askew, dressed in a pale green nightgown. The door behind her was slightly ajar. Officer Keegan noted no immediate signs of forced entry at the front, but the scene inside would tell a different story. Detective Alan Forsyth, lead investigator on the case, was notified and reached the site shortly after 9. By this time, it was clear that the investigation was not merely one of a sudden death. The porch, with its flaked white paint, framed a tragedy that would soon engulf this quiet community. Detective Forsyth described in his later statements an immediate recognition of the gravity of the situation upon observing the victim and the surroundings. The body was officially pronounced at the scene by Dr. Marjorie Linton, the county coroner, at 9:31. Preliminary examination suggested a time of death between midnight and 2 in the morning, consistent with the onset of rigor mortis noted by Dr. Linton. The cause of death was not immediately apparent, as there were no visible wounds or indications of a struggle in the immediate area. Inside the Jennings' home, investigators noted several points of interest. The living room appeared undisturbed, but in the kitchen, a coffee cup lay shattered on the tiled floor, its broken pieces scattered near an upturned chair. The refrigerator door was left slightly open, a detail that would later puzzle detectives. A calendar hanging on the wall displayed an unfinished list for the week's grocery shopping. In her left hand, Paula Jennings clutched a crumpled receipt from a local pharmacy, dated the previous afternoon. The items listed included over-the-counter cold medication and a small bottle of aspirin. Her purse, found beside her on the porch, contained a set of keys, a tube of red lipstick, and 2 folded $50 bills with the corners precisely aligned. The investigation quickly centered on Paula Jennings' personal life. Interviews with neighbors and close friends revealed her to be a reserved yet amiable individual. She had been employed as a librarian at the Waynesboro Public Library for nearly a decade. Her colleagues described her as diligent and meticulous, traits that carried over into her personal affairs. It was noted that she was planning a spring trip to visit her sister, Margaret Dean, in Illinois, a detail confirmed by a letter found in her mail. The autopsy conducted later that day by Dr. Linton revealed the presence of ligature marks on her wrists, previously concealed by the fabric of her nightgown. Toxicology results showed no signs of drugs or alcohol. However, a faint contusion was discovered on the back of her head, indicating that she might have been subdued before being left outside. These findings began to shape the narrative of a murder investigation. Further inquiries led detectives to examine Paula's recent interactions. One such detail was a peculiar phone call she received days earlier, as reported by her close friend Laura Milligan. According to Milligan, Paula had confided in her about a conversation that left her visibly agitated, though she dismissed it as a misunderstanding at the time. This call, made on the evening of January 2nd, was traced back to a payphone located at a gas station just outside of town. The potential significance of this call prompted the involvement of Detective Forsyth, who coordinated with local phone service providers to trace any further unusual activity. This collaboration extended to the retrieval of records from the gas station, though no immediate suspects or leads emerged from these efforts. Media attention quickly converged upon Waynesboro, with local newspapers such as the Waynesboro Gazette and the Franklin Times covering every development. Their reports fueled public interest and speculation, adding pressure on law enforcement to solve the case. Detective Forsyth, in a press statement, appealed to the public for any information regarding the movements of Paula Jennings on the night of her death. A tip line was established, receiving a moderate influx of calls, though none would prove immediately fruitful. As the investigation unfolded, certain inconsistencies began to surface. The unlocked door, the scattered fragments of the coffee cup, and the solitary receipt puzzled the investigative team. Each piece seemed to suggest a larger picture that remained frustratingly elusive. As January progressed into February, the community of Waynesboro remained on edge, haunted by the unanswered questions surrounding Paula Jennings's death. Despite meticulous investigation and the exhaustive pursuit of leads, the murder of Paula Jennings would soon become one of the most perplexing cases in Franklin County, with the suspect, once identified, eventually walking free due to insufficient evidence. In the hours before her untimely death, Paula Jennings spent the afternoon of January 4th, 1987, at the Waynesboro Community Center, participating in a book club meeting. According to Carol Rodriguez, a fellow book club member who spoke during a police interview, Paula appeared upbeat and engaged throughout the session. She was wearing a blue wool sweater and black slacks and carried a tan leather handbag. The club discussed The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, and Paula reportedly shared insightful commentary on the novel's themes. The meeting concluded at approximately 3 in the afternoon. After the book club, Paula drove to Nostrand's Grocery on Maple Street. Surveillance footage obtained from the store shows her entering at 3:15. The footage, reviewed as part of Detective Alan Forsyth's investigation, indicated that Paula spent about 20 minutes inside. She purchased a carton of milk, a loaf of bread, and a pack of Wrigley's spearmint gum. The cashier, Kenneth Lee, later recalled during a police interview that Paula seemed distracted, her smile subdued compared to her usual demeanor. Paula's next known movements trace her to Willow Park, a favorite spot of hers, according to her husband, David Jennings. David, who was questioned at length by the Franklin County Sheriff's Department, noted in a deposition that Paula often spent time at the park when she wanted to unwind. Witnesses at the park, including a jogger named Eliza Carpenter, reported seeing Paula seated on a wooden bench overlooking the small pond. Eliza, who spoke to the Waynesboro Gazette days after the murder, remembered Paula having a notebook in hand, scribbling occasionally while glancing at the water. Around 5:30, Paula returned to her residence at 312 Birch Lane. Her neighbor, Thomas Lang, a retired accountant, stated in his voluntary statement to the police that he noticed Paula's car pull into the driveway. Lang described Paula as appearing hurried, carrying a stack of books from her car into the house. The Jennings home phone records later verified that a call was placed by Paula to a number in Illinois at precisely 6:14. That evening, a call duration of 8 minutes. Who Paula spoke with during that call remains an unknown variable in the investigation. The evening continued with Paula cooking dinner, as confirmed by her husband David. He recalled during an interview conducted by Detective Forsyth that they ate around 7:15. The meal was simple: baked chicken, steamed broccoli, and mashed potatoes. At approximately 8, David left the house to attend a late shift at the local manufacturing plant where he worked. His shift was scheduled from 9 until 6 in the morning, providing him with an alibi confirmed through workplace records. Once David departed, the timeline becomes less clear. Paula's last known communication was a phone call made to her sister, Angela Roberts. Angela spoke with investigators from the Franklin County Sheriff's Department, providing details of their conversation, which revolved around family matters and plans for an upcoming visit. The call ended around 9:30 with Paula's usual sign-off, a promise to catch up soon. The next important timeline entry comes from George Patterson, a delivery driver for Sweeney's Pizzeria, who made a delivery to the Jennings neighborhood. Patterson, interviewed later during the inquest, reported seeing a light blue sedan parked outside the Jennings home around 10:15. This vehicle was not familiar to neighbors and has not been identified as belonging to any known associates of Paula. The presence of the sedan raises questions about who may have visited or watched Paula in the crucial hours leading to her death. As the night progressed, the Jennings neighbor, Eleanor Hayes, noted in her statement to police background noise coming from the Jennings house, including what she described as muffled voices around 11 that night. Eleanor, described by friends as a night owl, was accustomed to late-night sounds, making her observation particularly noteworthy. However, she could not discern whether the voices indicated distress or were simply part of a conversation. Adding further complexity to the timeline is a report filed by Officer James Keegan at approximately 11:35. A call was logged from the Jennings residence to the Waynesboro Public Library's answering service. Due to the library's closure at that hour, the call went unanswered, and the contents of the message, if any, remain unknown. The origin of this call, whether made by Paula or another party, continues to be a subject of interest in the investigation. Each of these events on January 4th added to the layered complexity of Paula Jennings's last day. From her routine activities at the book club and grocery store to the enigmatic phone calls and unidentified vehicle, the pieces of Paula's final hours remain fragmented. Detectives have spent decades attempting to piece these elements into a coherent narrative, but significant gaps persist. The actions and interactions of that day offer tantalizing glimpses into the circumstances surrounding her death. Yet without a definitive lead or breakthrough, Paula's last day remains an open chapter in an unresolved case. In the immediate aftermath of Paula Jennings's murder, the Waynesboro Crime Scene Unit arrived at 312 Birch Lane. Led by forensic specialist Rachel McIntyre, the team meticulously documented the area where Jennings's body was discovered. According to the initial report filed by McIntyre on January 5, 1987, the team began their examination just past 10 in the morning. The primary focus was the living room, where Jennings's body was found. Forensic photographs revealed an overturned coffee table and a shattered ceramic vase near the entrance. No fingerprints were found on the vase, but the shards were carefully collected for further analysis. Among the personal effects found on Jennings were a silver bracelet engraved with her initials and a small leather-bound notebook. The notebook contained several handwritten notes, mostly detailing her daily activities and plans. On the final page, there was a cryptic note that read, "Meet on Birch." The crime scene technicians also noted a half-empty glass of red wine on the kitchen counter. A subsequent toxicology analysis, as noted in the Franklin County Forensic Laboratory report dated January 7, 1987, confirmed that the wine contained trace amounts of lorazepam, a prescription medication. There was no mention of this drug in Jennings's medical records, leading investigators to consider the possibility of foul play involving drugging. Detective Alan Forsyth conducted a thorough search of Jennings's bedroom, where he discovered a series of unsent letters addressed to her estranged brother, William Jennings. The letters, dated from December 1986 through the days leading up to her death, expressed a deep desire to reconnect. William Jennings, who resided in Boise, Idaho, was later contacted, but stated he had not received any communication from his sister in over 2 years. On the evening of January the 5th, Detective Forsyth interviewed Jennings's neighbor, Mrs. Agnes Washington, who resided at 314 Birch Lane. Washington reported hearing raised voices on the night of the murder, between the hours of 11 and midnight. She described the voices as indistinct and muffled, but noted a distinct male tone. This report led investigators to question male acquaintances in Jennings's life. The autopsy, conducted by Dr. Marjorie Linton, revealed significant findings. Besides the previously noted ligature marks around her neck, the autopsy showed a faint contusion on the scalp, indicative of a possible struggle. The report, completed on January 8, 1987, noted the official cause of death as asphyxiation by strangulation. During a thorough inspection of the house, Officer James Keegan discovered an unidentified set of footprints leading from the rear entrance through the garden. The prints, captured in photographs, were sent to the Pennsylvania State Crime Lab for further analysis. Initial results, received on January 12, 1987, indicated the size matched a men's shoe, approximately size 10. In the days following the murder, the Franklin County Sheriff's Department received numerous tips. One such tip detailed in the department's log from January 10, 1987, was from an anonymous caller who claimed to have seen a suspicious man loitering near Jennings's residence on the night of her death. The caller described the man as wearing a dark trench coat and a wide-brimmed hat, but no further identifying features were provided. Kenneth Lee, a former colleague of Jennings, was brought in for questioning on January 11, 1987, after it was revealed that he had contacted her multiple times in the weeks preceding her death. Lee denied any involvement and provided an alibi for the night in question, stating he had been out of town on business. His alibi was later corroborated by his employer. A significant development occurred on January the 15th, when Officer Keegan discovered a crumpled receipt in a wastebasket in Jennings's kitchen. The receipt, dated January the 3rd, 1987, was from Sweeney's Pizzeria, a local eatery known to Jennings. The discovery suggested she had visitors or possibly dined with someone not yet accounted for in the investigation. As investigators continued to seek clarity on the case, Carol Rodriguez, a friend of Jennings who last saw her at the Waynesboro Community Center, was re-interviewed. Rodriguez recalled a peculiar encounter she observed at the center on January 4, 1987. According to Rodriguez, a man approached Jennings with what seemed to be urgency, though the content of their interaction remained unknown. The Franklin County Sheriff's Department requested assistance from the FBI field office in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, given the case's complex nature and potential interstate implications due to Jennings's Illinois connections. The FBI's involvement, however, has not yet yielded substantial new leads as of this reporting. As of now, the forensic investigation continues to examine several pieces of evidence, including fiber samples collected from the living room carpet and an unidentified hair strand found on Jennings's clothing. The case remains unsolved, with numerous questions still unanswered, perpetuating the mystery that surrounds the tragic death of Paula Jennings. On January 9, 1987, Detective Alan Forsyth of the Franklin County Sheriff's Department began systematically examining the alibis and timelines of individuals present at the Waynesboro Community Center on January the 4th. A particular focus was on those last seen interacting with Paula Jennings before her murder. The investigation prioritized verifying each suspect's whereabouts during the critical timeframe of midnight to 2 in the morning. Initially, the investigators looked at Kenneth Lee, a local handyman known to frequent the community center for various repair jobs. According to records, Lee was at the center on the afternoon of January the 4th, fixing a broken window in the East Wing's activity room. Upon inquiry, Lee stated that he left the premises around 5 in the evening and returned home to his apartment on Pine Street, corroborated by a statement from his neighbor, Mrs. Gail Stevenson, who recalled hearing him enter around 5:15. Moreover, a receipt from the Waynesboro Lanes bowling alley, time-stamped 8:30 that night, placed Lee with a group of friends, thus providing him a seemingly solid alibi. Another individual scrutinized was David Jennings, Paula's estranged husband. Jennings, a resident of Chambersburg, had reportedly spoken with Paula over the phone on January 2nd. Detectives were keen to verify his movements on the night of her death. Jennings claimed he was at home alone, a claim he substantiated with a phone record revealing a call he made at 11 o'clock to his sister, Nancy Fuller, in Hagerstown, Maryland. Fuller confirmed the call lasted approximately half an hour. Despite the absence of a strong motive, the timing of this call still left Jennings with a narrow window of opportunity. Carol Rodriguez, a close friend and colleague of Paula, was another name on Forsyth's list. On January the 4th, Rodriguez attended a late afternoon meeting at the community center, leaving shortly after 6 in the evening with her husband, Greg Rodriguez. Greg, interviewed separately, stated they spent the remainder of the evening at home, preparing for their son's birthday party the next day. His statement was supported by several neighbors who observed the preparations through the windows facing Oak Street. Additionally, a cake receipt time-stamped 7 in the evening from Nostrand's grocery further corroborated their account. The next suspect of interest was Thomas Lang, a custodian employed part-time at the community center. Lang's routine included cleaning duties 3 nights a week, including Sundays. On January 4th, he clocked in at 7 in the evening, as confirmed by the facility's time cards. Lang reported finishing his tasks by 10:30, after which he claimed to have left directly for his residence on Maple Avenue, arriving around 11. This statement was verified by his housemate, Victor Chang, who reported seeing Lang arrive at that time and remarked on the unusually muddy condition of his shoes, coinciding with that evening's heavy rainfall. Detective Forsyth also revisited the timeline of George Patterson, a security guard stationed near the community center. Patterson's log entries indicated he patrolled the area between 11 at night and 1 in the morning on January the 5th. Interviewed on January 10th, Patterson noted seeing a figure nearby around 11:30, dressed in dark clothing, walking briskly toward Birch Lane. Although he couldn't provide a detailed description, this observation was taken seriously, given its proximity to the estimated time of Paula's death. Further complicating matters was the anonymous call received on January 12th, suggesting a man in a dark trench coat was seen near Sweeney's Pizzeria on January 11th, but no individuals matching this description were identified in connection to Paula's murder. Detective Forsyth pursued this lead by interviewing employees at the pizzeria, including Patty Green, the shift manager, who recalled an unfamiliar individual ordering 2 slices of pepperoni at around 9 that night. This description, however, led to no substantial connections. As detectives pieced together the suspects' alibis, they encountered numerous inconsistencies. For instance, discrepancies arose in the timeline provided by Eliza Carpenter, who claimed to have seen Paula at Nostrand's grocery shortly after 6 on the evening of January the 4th, conflicting with Carol Rodriguez's account of their simultaneous departure from the community center. Eliza's version introduced uncertainty about Paula's last known whereabouts. The investigation continued to sift through statements and evidence. Detective Forsyth ordered a review of the community center's visitor logs and telephone records for anomalies. This effort aimed to uncover any previously overlooked communications or patterns linking the suspects to Paula's final hours. The overarching challenge remained, assembling a coherent narrative that could withstand scrutiny by the district attorney's office and potentially a grand jury. As spring approached, the Franklin County Sheriff's Department, alongside the FBI's Harrisburg field office, pressured by public interest and media scrutiny, intensified their investigative efforts. New witnesses were interviewed and previous testimonies re-evaluated, with Detective Forsyth determined to untangle the web of alibis and timelines that obscured the truth about Paula Jennings' final hours. Despite these efforts, the case remained unresolved, leaving the community of Waynesboro with unanswered questions and a lingering sense of unease. On January 13, 1987, the investigation into Paula Jennings' murder turned towards the exploration of witness statements, many of which were gathered from the Waynesboro Community Center, where Paula had attended a gathering 2 nights prior to her death. Detective Alan Forsyth focused on identifying inconsistencies in the accounts provided by attendees. Carol Rodriguez, a close friend of Paula's, had remarked to Detective Forsyth during her interview on January 5th that Paula seemed unusually tense at the event. According to Carol's statement, Paula had repeatedly glanced at the entrance throughout the evening, as if anticipating someone's arrival. However, Greg Rodriguez, Carol's husband, who was also present at the gathering, did not recall Paula behaving anxiously. Instead, Greg stated Paula was her usual self, engaging in conversations and laughing with others. This discrepancy in observations raised questions about the reliability of witness perceptions under stress. Another witness, Eliza Carpenter, provided additional insight. Interviewed on January 2014, Eliza told the detectives that she briefly spoke with Paula in the kitchen of the community center. During this conversation, she recalled Paula mentioning a disagreement with her brother, David Jennings, although Eliza admitted that Paula did not disclose the nature of the dispute. This conversation was later confirmed by other attendees, although their accounts varied slightly in detail and timing. Eliza noted that Paula had excused herself shortly after their discussion, citing a need to make a phone call. However, Detective Forsyth was unable to verify this call. as there were no records indicating that any calls were made from the community center's phone that night. On January the 16th, statements were obtained from Kenneth Lee and George Patterson, both known to frequent Sweeney's Pizzeria, where Paula was last seen publicly on January 4th. Kenneth Lee, questioned by Officer James Keegan, initially claimed to have left the pizzeria around 10:20 p.m. However, when pressed further, Kenneth admitted that he saw Paula leave the establishment alone at approximately 9:45 p.m. George Patterson's statement, taken on the same day, contradicted Kenneth's account. George insisted that Paula exited Sweeney's accompanied by an unknown man approximately 15 minutes before 10. George described the man as tall, wearing a dark overcoat, though he could not provide further identifying features. Another pivotal interview took place on January 17th with Thomas Lang, a regular patron of Nostrand's grocery, who claimed to have seen a man fitting George Patterson's description near Birch Lane the night of the murder. Lang, speaking with Detective Forsyth, placed the man at the intersection of Birch Lane and Maple Avenue at around midnight. Lang's statement was significant due to its alignment with the estimated timeframe of Paula's death. Lang's recollections, however, were challenged by a lack of corroborative evidence, as no other witnesses reported seeing a man matching that description in the vicinity at that time. Further complicating the investigation were the conflicting statements from the Jennings family. David Jennings, Paula's brother, had initially been forthcoming about his interactions with Paula, yet inconsistencies arose. According to Detective Forsyth's notes from a January 18th interview, David claimed he last spoke with Paula on January 3rd during a family dinner. However, phone records later revealed a call from David's residence to Paula's home on January the 4th, raising questions about his earlier account. Adding another layer to the case, Mrs. Gail Stevenson, a neighbor of Paula's, reported an unusual event that occurred on January 3rd. In her police statement, Mrs. Stevenson described seeing a white sedan parked outside Paula's home late in the evening. She noted the vehicle was unfamiliar to the neighborhood and remained there for nearly an hour. Despite this potentially valuable lead, the ensuing investigation into the vehicle proved inconclusive, as no registration details were obtained, and the vehicle was not seen again. On January the 19th, the Franklin County Sheriff's Department received an anonymous tip pointing to a possible connection between Paula's murder and a similar case in nearby Chambersburg. The tip implied a shared suspect in both cases, citing the use of ligatures and the presence of a faint contusion as common factors. Detective Forsyth coordinated with the Chambersburg Police Department to explore this angle, but a definitive link was not established due to lack of physical evidence. Throughout late January, the investigation was further strained by public speculation fueled by local media outlets, including the Waynesboro Gazette and the Franklin Times. Articles published in those papers on January 20th suggested Paula's murder might involve multiple individuals. These suggestions were based on an anonymous letter sent to the Gazette, claiming knowledge of a coordinated effort behind the crime. The letter, however, was dismissed during the investigation due to its vague and unverifiable content. The final witness interview conducted in January was with Victor Chang, a co-worker of Paula's at the Waynesboro Public Library. Chang, interviewed on January the 21st, noted that Paula had been working on a project involving archival documents, which she often took home. Victor mentioned that Paula was particularly interested in the history of property acquisitions in Waynesboro, a fact Detective Forsyth found curious given the lack of direct connection to the current evidence. However, the significance of Paula's research remained uncertain, leaving investigators without a clear path forward. As January drew to a close, the investigation faced an increasing number of contradictions and inconclusive leads, reflecting the complexity and depth of the case. Each new witness statement seemed to introduce more questions than answers, perpetuating the mystery surrounding Paula Jennings' untimely death and leaving law enforcement with a growing sense of urgency to untangle the conflicting narratives. The case, however, remained unresolved, with the community still searching for clarity and justice amidst the uncertainty. On January 22, 1987, Detective Alan Forsyth of the Franklin County Sheriff's Department received a new piece of information that would add another layer to the investigation into Paula Jennings' murder. A report from the Pennsylvania State Police Forensic Lab arrived at his desk, detailing the results from a fiber analysis conducted on the clothing Paula was wearing at the time of her death. The report indicated that several fibers found on her coat were a match to those commonly used in the manufacturing of dark trench coats. This finding provided a potential link to the anonymous caller who, on January 12th, had mentioned seeing a person in a dark trench coat near Paula's home on the night of the murder. The investigation's progress was marked by both advancement and setbacks. On January the 23rd, 1987, a search was conducted by the Waynesboro Crime Scene Unit at the residence of Kenneth Lee, one of the individuals previously identified as a person of interest. During the search, officers discovered a small receipt from Nostrand's grocery dated January the 2, 1987, within his wallet. This receipt corroborated Kenneth's earlier statement that he had visited the store on that day. However, no items linking him directly to the crime scene at 3 and 12 Birch Lane were found, and his alibi for the night in question remained intact. Meanwhile, the investigation into Paula Jennings' personal life continued to yield potential leads. Her colleague from the Waynesboro Public Library, Margaret Dean, came forward with additional insights during an interview on January 24th. Dean recalled an unusual conversation she had with Paula shortly before the murder. Paula had mentioned feeling uneasy about an individual who had been frequenting the library but did not elaborate further. Dean's testimony led investigators to review library surveillance tapes from late December 1986, an effort to identify any suspicious behavior. The tapes, however, provided no conclusive evidence. On January 25, 1987, the Franklin Times reported that a new witness had come forward. Mrs. Harriet Murray, a neighbor living on the adjacent street to Birch Lane, spoke to Detective Forsyth about a vehicle she noticed parked near Paula's residence around midnight on January the 4th. She described it as a white sedan, similar to one mentioned in a January 18th tip. Her statement lent credence to earlier reports, prompting detectives to re-examine their records for registrations of such vehicles in the area. Despite these efforts, no clear match was found and the vehicle remained unidentified. In an attempt to expand the scope of the investigation, the FBI's Harrisburg field office was contacted again on January 27th to assist with developing a psychological profile of the potential suspect. Special Agent Linda Bradley was assigned to the case. Bradley, with over 15 years of experience in criminal profiling, noted that the circumstances of the murder, particularly the location within Paula's home and the use of ligatures, suggested a methodical individual who might have had some prior acquaintance with the victim. Her analysis, documented in a report dated January 28, 1987, offered new avenues for the investigative team to consider, though no specific suspect was identified. The following day, January 29th, Detective Forsyth received a call from a man identifying himself as Michael Hansen, claiming to possess information regarding Paula's activities in Illinois. Hansen, who worked at the Peoria Public Library, alleged that Paula had been inquiring about property acquisitions during her visit in December 1986. This information aligned with earlier findings from the research logs at the Waynesboro Public Library. Hansen agreed to fax copies of any relevant documents he could locate. The documents, which arrived on January 30th, included several maps annotated with Paula's handwriting, highlighting properties in both Illinois and Pennsylvania. However, the significance of these maps remained unclear. The search for physical evidence continued, and on January 30th, a return examination of the Jennings residence yielded an unexpected discovery. Beneath a floorboard in Paula's study, detectives found a small locked metal box. Inside were several pieces of correspondence, including a series of letters from someone identified only as TL. The letters, dating back several months, hinted at a clandestine relationship, but were otherwise devoid of explicit details. The initials did not immediately correspond to any known associate in Paula's life, adding another layer to the growing mystery. February began with a renewed focus on these letters. On February 1st, Special Agent Bradley and Detective Forsyth began tracing the origin of the stationery used, with assistance from the Pennsylvania State Police Forensic Division. Despite efforts to trace the paper back to a specific retailer, the results were inconclusive. The letter's content, though cryptic, became a key focus of profiler Bradley's continued analysis of potential suspects' behaviors and networks. As the weeks passed, the investigation struggled with numerous leads that revealed more questions than answers. The identity of Dai TL remained elusive, the significance of the white sedan unexplained, and the relevance of Paula's property interest unclarified. Despite the joint efforts of the Franklin County Sheriff's Department and FBI, Paula Jennings' murder case persisted without resolution. Each new discovery seemed only to deepen the enigma surrounding her untimely death, leaving investigators and the public with a growing sense of perplexity. On February 5, 1987, the Franklin County Sheriff's Department received an unexpected piece of information that would reignite interest in Paula Jennings' murder investigation. A local resident, Harold Bennett, reported finding a discarded wallet near the train tracks at the southern edge of Waynesboro. The wallet contained a Pennsylvania driver's license belonging to one Kenneth Lee, a name previously associated with the case. Upon retrieval of the wallet, detectives noted its worn leather and the presence of several receipts dated January 3, 1987, from Nostrand's grocery. The wallet's contents included $32 in cash and a handwritten note reading, "Meet at the Birch," reminiscent of the entry found in Paula Jennings' leather-bound notebook. This discovery prompted Detective Alan Forsyth to re-examine the significance of Kenneth Lee in the timeline surrounding Paula's death. 3 days later, on February 8, 1987, Detective Forsyth arranged to interview Harold Bennett. During the interview, Bennett described seeing a man matching Lee's description near the tracks on January 5, 1987, around 10 in the morning. Bennett mentioned the man appeared agitated and was speaking animatedly into a payphone located at the nearby gas station. The surveillance footage from the service station confirmed the presence of a man in a dark trench coat using the phone at that time. However, the footage was not clear enough to positively identify the individual as Kenneth Lee. The case took another turn when on February 12, 1987, the Pennsylvania State Police Forensic Lab completed a comparative analysis of fibers found in Paula Jennings' home and from the wallet. The report indicated a match, suggesting that Kenneth Lee's wallet had been at the scene. This prompted further scrutiny of Lee's whereabouts during the crucial window between midnight and 2 in the morning on January 5, 1987. Further complicating matters, on February 15, 1987, Charles Yang, a private investigator hired by the Jennings family, uncovered a connection between Kenneth Lee and Victor Chang, a local real estate developer linked to property acquisitions in Waynesboro. Yang discovered that Lee frequently visited Chang's offices, located on North Main Street, during the weeks leading up to Paula Jennings' murder. When questioned, Chang claimed their meetings were solely business-related, involving property leasing negotiations. Meanwhile, on February 19, 1987, Detective Forsyth received another anonymous tip. This time, the caller, a woman, claimed to have seen Kenneth Lee in a heated argument with an unknown woman outside Sweeney's Pizzeria on the evening of January 4, 1987. This was the same location and date after which Paula had last been seen alive. The tipster provided a description of the woman who wore a distinctive red scarf. Efforts to identify and locate the woman proved challenging. No reports of a missing person matching the description had been filed. However, on February 22, 1987, the Waynesboro Gazette published an appeal for information about the woman with the red scarf. In response, Gloria Mitchell, a waitress at Sweeney's Pizzeria, contacted the Franklin County Sheriff's Department. She confirmed seeing Kenneth Lee at the pizzeria that night, accompanied by the woman in question. According to Mitchell, their conversation grew increasingly tense, though she could not overhear specifics. Detective Forsyth followed up by revisiting the guest log at the Waynesboro Community Center, where Paula had attended a book club meeting on January 4, 1987. Among the attendees listed was a name previously overlooked: Helen Sanders. A subsequent background check revealed her to be a former colleague of Kenneth Lee's, though she had relocated to Pittsburgh 2 years prior. On February 26, 1987, Forsyth reached out to Sanders for an interview. Sanders confirmed knowing Lee, but denied being in Waynesboro on the night in question, citing her attendance at a conference in Chicago. In early March 1987, the FBI's Harrisburg field office, led by Special Agent Linda Bradley, decided to re-evaluate the connections between the Jennings case and possible criminal activities linked to local real estate ventures. As part of this renewed analysis, an investigative report highlighted discrepancies in Victor Chang's financial records. The records, obtained through a subpoena, showed unaccounted for transactions between January and February of 1987, raising questions about Chang's business dealings during the time frame of Paula Jennings's murder. Further inquiries revealed that Kenneth Lee was not an official employee of Chang's company, but was listed as an independent contractor for security services. This role provided Lee access to various properties managed by Chang, including several in close proximity to the Jennings residence. On March 10, 1987, Detective Forsyth requested former security logs for these properties, hoping to find records of Lee's activities during the critical period. By late March 1987, the case had attracted attention from the state's Attorney General's office, prompting a broader investigation into potential organized crime links involving property dealings in Waynesboro. Despite these efforts, the investigation remained stalled. With each new lead, the circle appeared to tighten around Kenneth Lee, yet no conclusive evidence directly implicated him in Paula's murder. As the case continued to unravel, it seemed the truth remained just out of reach, concealed within the tangled web of connections and unanswered questions. On February 20th, 1987, the Franklin County Sheriff's Department received another anonymous tip related to the murder of Paula Jennings. This time, the information indicated a possible sighting of a man fitting the description previously provided by the anonymous caller on January 12th. According to the tip, the man was seen near Oakwood Park in Chambersburg the prior week. Detective Alan Forsyth was assigned to investigate this lead further. The Franklin County Sheriff's Department reached out to the Chambersburg Police Department to compare this sighting with any suspicious activity reported in the area. Lieutenant Robert Carlson of the Chambersburg Police confirmed that they had received complaints about a suspicious individual loitering near the park on February 15th. The description matched the January 12th tip: a man wearing a dark trench coat. Detective Forsyth, working alongside Lieutenant Carlson, canvassed Oakwood Park and its surrounding areas. They interviewed residents and local business owners, but no one could provide additional details or identify the man. A review of surveillance footage from nearby establishments yielded no useful information, as the cameras did not cover the park area directly. Meanwhile, on February 25th, 1987, the Pennsylvania State Police forensic team reported back on the fiber analysis initially connected to the dark trench coats seized earlier in the investigation. The report, authored by forensic analyst Susan Gregory, indicated that the fibers found at the Jennings residence did not match any of the samples taken from the coats. This result redirected the focus onto other potential leads, as the trench coat theory now seemed less viable. On March 1st, Detective Forsyth revisited the idea that property acquisitions could be linked to Jennings's murder. With the assistance of Agent Linda Bradley from the FBI Harrisburg field office, they examined the financial records of local developers, including Michael Hansen, who was previously noted for his interest in properties on Birch Lane. Hansen's alibi for the night of January 4th appeared credible, but discrepancies in his financial records raised suspicion. Further investigation revealed that Hansen had been in contact with Thomas Lang, a known associate of Charles Yang, a figure with prior criminal dealings in real estate fraud. However, connecting these interactions directly to Jennings's murder proved elusive. Both Hansen and Lang denied any involvement, and there was insufficient evidence to formally charge them. March 5th saw a breakthrough when forensic linguist Dr. Ellen Porter from the Pennsylvania State University was engaged to analyze the anonymous calls to the tip line. Dr. Porter noted distinct linguistic patterns, suggesting the caller might be a native of the Midwest, possibly Illinois, which aligned with several leads pointing to contacts Jennings had in that region. Unfortunately, without more specific information, this line of inquiry remained inconclusive. On March 8th, the Waynesboro Gazette published a detailed feature by local journalist Helen Sanders. The article explored Paula Jennings' community involvement, focusing particularly on her work at the Waynesboro Community Center. It highlighted her efforts to support underprivileged families, including those in low-income housing projects. This angle prompted a renewed look into Jennings' interactions with local tenants and property managers. Following this, Detective Forsyth interviewed Brenda Nolan, a resident of the Liberty Acres housing project. Nolan recounted that Paula Jennings had advocated for improved living conditions there and had frequent run-ins with property manager Hank Fuller due to tenant complaints. Fuller, when questioned, denied any animosity toward Jennings, but admitted they had conflicts over her insistence on certain housing reforms. Despite this, Fuller had a verifiable alibi for the night of Jennings's murder. By mid-March, several key witnesses were re-interviewed, including Angela Roberts, who had previously reported seeing suspicious activity near Jennings's home the evening of January 4th. Roberts now recalled a blue sedan parked near the Jennings residence at approximately 11 that night. She noted that the driver appeared to be a woman, but the darkness and distance made it difficult to discern further details. This prompted the detectives to check vehicle registrations matching the description, but no conclusive link was established. As March drew to a close, a new potential witness emerged. Lydia Grant, a former employee at Nostrand's grocery, claimed she had seen an unfamiliar man speaking with Paula Jennings 2 days before her murder. Grant described him as being in his early 30s, roughly 6 feet tall, with dark hair. This led investigators to consider whether the man might have connections to the unidentified woman reportedly seen in the blue sedan. Despite these developments, the investigation remained hampered by a lack of definitive evidence tying any individual to the crime. The Franklin Times ran a piece on March 29th, emphasizing the community's frustration with the continued absence of an arrest. The article quoted Detective Forsyth, who acknowledged the complexity of the case and assured the public that efforts to resolve it were ongoing. In early April, the case saw another dead end when a promising lead involving a former tenant of the Liberty Acres project who had recently moved out of state failed to yield results. Attempts to trace the individual proved fruitless due to outdated contact information and records. Nevertheless, investigators continued to explore the various unresolved elements of the case, aware that each new piece of the puzzle could potentially unlock the mystery surrounding Paula Jennings's murder. The case remained one of lingering questions, with more theories than answers. As of the documentary's final edit, it stands unsolved, a lingering shadow over the close-knit community of Waynesboro. In the months following the murder of Paula Jennings, the town of Waynesboro, Pennsylvania, found itself enveloped in an atmosphere of unease and apprehension. The case, designated under file number 7845, had garnered significant attention both locally and nationally. However, despite the resources allocated and the ongoing investigation, a sense of unresolved tension settled over the community. On March 11, 1987, the Waynesboro Community Board convened a public meeting at the local high school auditorium, attended by over 200 residents. Local media, including the Waynesboro Gazette and Franklin Times, reported on the meeting's proceedings. The assembly aimed to address the public's concerns and discuss ongoing safety measures. Mayor Richard Caldwell presided over the meeting, emphasizing the importance of community vigilance in the wake of recent events. During the gathering, residents voiced their fears and frustrations. Linda Ramirez, a community advocate, expressed concern about the growing number of rumors circulating about the case. "We need facts, not speculation," she stated, a sentiment echoed by many in attendance. Her comments were quoted in the next day's edition of the Franklin Times. The heightened anxiety was not unwarranted. According to police records, the Waynesboro Police Department received over 80 calls related to suspicious activities in the month following the murder. Sergeant Paul Anderson, who led the Neighborhood Patrol Division, noted an increase in reported break-ins and prowler sightings, though none were definitively linked to Paula Jennings's case. The local education system also felt the impact. Superintendent Helen Martin issued a statement on March 22, 1987, detailing enhanced safety protocols for the district's schools. This included the implementation of a new visitor check-in procedure and the introduction of regular safety drills. The Waynesboro Gazette published Martin's statement, underlining the community's commitment to safeguarding its youth. Despite these efforts, the lingering fear persisted. A survey conducted by sociology professor Dr. Janet Whitley from the nearby Shippensburg University indicated that over 60% of Waynesboro residents felt less safe in their community than they did prior to Paula Jennings's murder. The survey results were referenced in a segment of the local cable news channel, WBN Channel 11, on March 29th. In response to mounting pressure from the community and media, the Franklin County Sheriff's Department held a press conference on April 2, 1987. Detective Alan Forsyth provided an update on the investigation, reiterating that all available resources were being utilized to solve the case. He acknowledged, however, the challenges posed by limited evidence and the difficulty of tracking potential suspects. "We are leaving no stone unturned," Forsyth assured, as reported by both the Waynesboro Gazette and the Franklin Times. The press conference did little to quell public anxiety. Calls to the anonymous tip line established by the Franklin County Sheriff's Department numbered over 400 by the end of April. Detective Forsyth later noted in an internal briefing that the majority of these calls provided no substantial leads. Nonetheless, the continued public interest underscored the deep-rooted desire for resolution within the community. Meanwhile, the Jennings family continued to grapple with their loss. William Jennings, Paula's younger brother, spoke to reporters from the Franklin Times on April 5, 1987. He recounted his sister's vibrant personality and her love for literature, a passion she shared with her students at the Waynesboro High School, where she taught English. The interview highlighted the personal toll of Paula's unsolved murder, as her family struggled to navigate life without her. Outside of the Jennings household, local businesses also experienced the ripple effects of Paula's death. Nostrand's Grocery, where Paula had been last seen by friends before her murder, reported a noticeable decline in evening customers. Store owner Harold Nostrand mentioned in an interview with the Waynesboro Gazette that patrons were uneasy about going out after dark, a sentiment that reflected the broader community's apprehensions. By late spring, the investigation had expanded beyond the confines of Franklin County. On May 12, 1987, the FBI's Harrisburg Field Office, led by Special Agent Linda Bradley, issued a statement confirming their continued involvement in the case. According to federal protocol, the FBI's assistance was deemed necessary given the possibility of interstate elements tied to the investigation. Despite these developments, the case remained stubbornly cold. Detective Forsyth and his team pursued multiple avenues, delving into Paula's professional life, her acquaintances, and any potential undisclosed relationships. However, each path ended in a cul-de-sac, with little more than circumstantial evidence to guide their efforts. The community's coping mechanisms varied. Some residents banded together to form neighborhood watch groups, while others turned to local churches for solace and support. Reverend Thomas Wright of the First Baptist Church reported a significant increase in attendance during his Sunday services, with congregants seeking comfort in collective prayer. As the one-year anniversary of Paula Jennings' murder approached, Waynesboro stood as a town forever changed. The unresolved questions and elusive justice continued to cast a shadow over the community. The investigation into her death remained active, sustained by the determination of law enforcement and the unwavering hope of those who believed that, one day, the truth would emerge from the shadows. As of October 2023, the murder of Paula Jennings remains unsolved. Despite decades of work by law enforcement agencies, including the Franklin County Sheriff's Department and the FBI's field office in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, no arrests have been made. The case that began on January 5, 1987, with the discovery of Jennings's body at 312 Birch Lane in Waynesboro, Pennsylvania, continues to perplex investigators and haunt the community. Detective Alan Forsyth, one of the original detectives on the case, retired in 1999, but the investigation has seen a renewed interest in recent years. In early 2019, a team of cold case investigators was assembled by the Pennsylvania State Police. Led by Detective Rebecca Lawson, this team aimed to re-examine evidence using modern technology unavailable at the time of the murder. One of the primary focuses was the reanalysis of fiber evidence previously collected at the scene. Detective Lawson stated in a press conference on March 15, 2019, "With advancements in forensic science, we hope to uncover evidence that was either overlooked or unanalyzable during the original investigation." The cold case team began by delving into all available documentation, re-interviewing witnesses who had been involved 32 years earlier. Margaret Dean, who was Paula Jennings' close friend and a key witness, was contacted for further questioning. Dean, who had moved to Illinois shortly after the murder, noted that Paula had become increasingly secretive in the months leading up to her death. In a recent interview with the Waynesboro Gazette, Dean recalled, "Paula mentioned meeting someone who promised her something big. She didn't say who or what, but it clearly intrigued her." Further probing into Jennings's social circle unearthed a previously unexamined letter found in a box of personal belongings stored by her family. The letter, dated December 21, 1986, was addressed to a Mr. TL with a cryptic message about a forthcoming change. This led investigators to re-evaluate earlier suspects, including Thomas Lang, a name that had surfaced multiple times during the initial inquiry, but lacked sufficient evidence for a deeper pursuit. In June 2019, Detective Lawson's team conducted a new DNA analysis of items collected from the crime scene. The analysis identified trace amounts of DNA that matched none of the profiles in the existing criminal databases, which included known associates of Paula Jennings, as well as the initial suspects, such as Kenneth Lee. At a press briefing on July 10, 2019, Lawson expressed the significance of this finding. The presence of unidentified DNA suggests the involvement of someone previously unknown to the investigation. It opens up new avenues for inquiry. Seeking additional insight, the team enlisted the help of criminal profiler Dr. Elliot Bronson, who had previously assisted in high-profile cases in the Midwest. Dr. Bronson suggested that the perpetrator might have been someone who meticulously planned the encounter with a deep understanding of Paula's routine. His analysis also highlighted the possibility of this being the work of an individual with a history of domestic violence, a theory that aligned with some aspects of the crime scene dynamics, although no known domestic partners fit this profile conclusively. In the spring of 2020, the case received a boost when the FBI released the details from its behavioral analysis unit, reinforcing the profile constructed by Dr. Bronson. The document suggested that the suspect could potentially be someone who had relocated out of the area following the crime, possibly explaining the lack of conviction despite the volume of original evidence. The resurgence of the investigation also prompted renewed public interest, leading to a surge in tips. The Waynesboro Crime Tip Line reported receiving over 300 calls between May and September of 2020. While many of these leads were ultimately deemed unhelpful, several offered previously unknown connections between Jennings and the Waynesboro Community Board's dealings in early 1987. In an unexpected development in August 2022, a woman named Lydia Grant, who had rented a basement apartment in Waynesboro during the late 1980s, came forward. She claimed to remember overhearing a conversation about a deal gone wrong involving property acquisitions, a topic Paula Jennings had been researching at the Waynesboro Public Library before her death. This prompted investigators to delve into archived real estate transactions in the area from that period, although no direct links to Jennings were initially found. More recently, in March 2023, Detective Lawson's team received the results of a toxicological review requested earlier that year. This review implicated a rare compound found in Paula's system, not typically screened for in standard autopsies of the 1980s. The compound, a derivative of lorazepam combined with another unidentified agent, suggested a sophisticated knowledge of pharmacology by the person who administered it, complicating the method of asphyxiation. Despite these continued efforts, the murder of Paula Jennings remains an open case, with detectives committed to uncovering the truth. The Franklin County Sheriff's Department, along with the Pennsylvania State Police and the FBI, continues to solicit information from the public, hoping that one day someone will come forward with the crucial piece of evidence needed to solve this enduring mystery. As Detective Lawson noted in a recent interview with WBN Channel 11, the passage of time has not diminished our determination. Paula Jennings's family deserves closure, and we will continue to pursue justice for her.